Hello and welcome to the Vivacity membership webinar for July 2016. Today we'll be reviewing standards 2.3, 2.4 and 8.3, which is all about third-party arrangements and how you ensure that you comply with the requirements of the legislation with managing your third parties. Third parties can be the highest risk for some RTOs, and this really depends on your written agreements and whether you have what policies and procedures you have in place to monitor those third-party arrangements. So today we'll be focusing on those two areas, the written agreement and the policies and procedures on how you would manage your third-party arrangements. There have been a number of RTOs around Australia that have been shut down due to the non-compliances caused by their third parties. So other training organisations delivering training and assessment under the scope of registration of another RTO, where they have not complied with the legislation and they've come into audit and they've been non-compliant, and so much so that it's shut down the whole RTO. So it can be a high risk, but what we'll do today is go through what are the requirements for you to set up third-party arrangements. One of the things that we strongly recommend for anybody who is an initial registration as an RTO, we recommend that you do not go to audit as stating that you will have third parties in place. We recommend your first year, get yourself up and going, ready to go, and get your own systems and practices in place first before you take on any third parties. And the reason why is you need to get it right first before you start bringing in other people, and then they're off doing things that you don't know what they're doing and whether they're complying with the legislation or not. So as I stated, it can be very high risk when you bring on third parties into your RTO. But then there's also opportunities for you to make money out of having third-party arrangements in place as well. There are some RTOs out there who have third-party arrangements and they're not monitoring them properly, and they see it as a way, as a cash cow for them to make money on certificates. Basically, they're getting paid for printing certificates, but they're not monitoring those arrangements, and they're not ensuring that there's agreements in place and that the third party understands their rights and responsibilities when they're working under this third party arrangement, which can cause huge risks within an RTO. So what we're going to go through is how do we manage those risks. Okay, so as per usual, this webinar forms part of your continuous improvement process under Standard 2.2, and it's part of the continuous improvement cycle. Following this webinar, you should hold a quality and compliance meeting and include in the minutes that you have attended this webinar, so that this will be part of your PD requirements, that you've attended the webinar, but also that you have reviewed the policies and procedures for 2.3, 2.4 and 8.3. You should review those policies and procedures within the manual to actually ensure that are you complying, are you following these policies and procedures? If you are you following it correctly? If not, what should you be doing? Do you need to change the policy and procedure, or do you need to update it? The policies and procedures for these clauses are pretty straightforward. I couldn't see any reason why you may make some adjustments unless you've got different arrangements in place for third parties and how you're going to manage those. So per the policies and procedures for continuous improvement, you should take a review of the policies and procedures, and any supporting documentation you should review as well. Okay, so standards 2.3 and 2.4 is the RTO ensures that where services are provided on its behalf by a third party, the provision of those services is subject to a written agreement. So we'll be looking at the written agreement requirements today. 2.4, the RTO has sufficient strategies and resources to systematically monitor any services delivered on its behalf, and uses these to ensure that the services delivered comply with the standards at all times. So it's your responsibility as an RTO to ensure that any third-party arrangements are complying with the vet quality framework and your policies and procedures within your organisation. And that's basically what these two standards are about. So who are third parties? Third parties can be a range of different people. Third parties are also known as partners, so you could have a partnership with another training organisation or something like that. So a third party could be another training organisation that is registered or not registered. So it could be someone who's delivering non-accredited training who wants to deliver training under your scope of registration, or it might be that someone's come along and they're not an RTO, they're only delivering a couple of courses, but they want to deliver under partnership or third party arrangement under your scope of registration. So it's anybody delivering training and or assessment under your scope of registration, and the RTO must be issuing the certificates for those qualifications or statements of attainment under your scope of registration. No one should ever be issuing any certificates or qualifications from your scope of registration. It should always be the RTO that is doing that. So basically, is anybody, third-party arrangement, could be an RTO. Sometimes I see this quite often. It might be that there's an RTO out there who doesn't have your qualification on their scope of registration. They may want to do a short course using your scope of registration just to do some delivery, or they may be putting it on their scope and they're still waiting for it to be approved and they want to deliver under your scope of registration. I've seen many RTOs who do work with other RTOs and they'll deliver under each other's scope of registration. So you need to make sure you've got third-party agreements, written agreements in place for those. So any organisation that you have engaged to market your services for the purpose of recruiting students on your behalf. There have been many issues out there at the moment with organisations that are RTOs that have hired recruitment companies or marketing companies to recruit students on behalf of the RTO. So you would have heard about vet fee help. There's been a number of issues with RTOs who are offering vet fee help, who've recruited a recruitment or a marketing company to recruit the students on their behalf. And there's been a few where they've gone into shopping centres and they're recruiting students within the shopping centre into vet fee help diploma level qualifications. There's been a lot of issues around these recruitment companies because what they've done is they're recruiting students, but they're not providing the students with sufficient information prior to course commencement to assist them to make an informed decision. So there's been all sorts of issues where students who've been recruited are actually not suitable for a diploma level qualification. They don't have the required skills and knowledge to actually do the course, or they don't have the prerequisites that may be required for them to do that diploma level qualification. And the marketing companies, they're at fault because they haven't been recruiting properly, but where it comes down to is the CEO of the RTO. It is your responsibility to ensure that you are actually compliant with all legislation at all times, and that includes monitoring and having third-party arrangements in place. And if you have someone marketing your services on your behalf, that it's clear to them what are their rights and responsibilities when they are marketing. What do they have to include in the marketing? What do they have to provide the student prior to course commencement to ensure that they're able to make an informed decision prior to course commencement? So you've got to make it really clear to these marketing companies that they are actually meeting the requirements of the legislation. Now, you could hire a marketing company to do some promotion for you on Facebook or social media. It could be that you've got someone writing your website. Ultimately, you don't have to have a written agreement with all of those type of third parties for the marketing, because it's basically you will be recruiting the students. They're just helping you with the marketing. But you do need to ensure that you've checked that everything that they've developed, so if it's a website, for example, that you've actually checked that the website meets the requirements of the standards and actually includes all the information required to help the student make an informed decision. So that's under standard 4.1, which is marketing, and standard 5.1 and 5.2, which is the information you provide to students prior to course commencement to assist them to make an informed decision into enrolling into one of your courses. So you've got to be really careful with who you're using to market your services. If you're unsure, get in contact with the client liaison officer and they'll be able to explain to you further what are those requirements. But essentially it is, if you're hiring a company where they're exclusively going out to recruit students and they're actually enrolling them, getting them filling the enrolment form, and then they're sending it to your organisation, that is recruiting on your behalf. If you've hired someone to build your website or do some social media marketing, that is, you're going to be recruiting them, you're going to be bringing the students in, but they've done the marketing. you've got to then check that that marketing actually complies with the requirements of the standards, and that includes the use of the NRT logo, the AQF logo, the placement of the unit code and title or qualification code and titles on the website. Look at standards 4.1, 5.1 and 5.2, and we have clear, in our policies and procedures, we have clear guidelines on what those should be, what should be in your marketing, and what you need to ensure that students have access to prior to course commencement. So you can either give that to a marketing company and say this is what you need to do to comply, or you get your CEO to check to make sure that the marketing actually complies with the legislation. Now, if you have contract trainers, they're not necessarily a third party. So if you might have a contract trainer who you've hired to go do the training and assessment on your behalf, but you're collecting all the evidence and then you're entering into your database and all that sort of stuff. You don't have to have a written agreement per se, like a third party agreement. You should have a contract in place and a position description that they sign. And on that, and in the one that we provide, there's a position, in the position description, it actually states what legislation, what standards they have to comply with. So they actually sign that. But that's not what they're talking about with these clauses, 2.3 and 2.4. This is more, you might be hiring a contract trainer similar to a training organisation or non-registered training organisation that is recruiting students on your behalf. So if they're going out there and they're recruiting students, for example, one that we used to do is we had trainers who would go out to different pubs, so it would be RSA, RCG training, and they would recruit students on behalf of the RTO, and they might collect enrolment forms. Now, what we did when we had that is we actually collected the enrolment forms first, verified the students first before we actually took them onto the class. Whereas you might have a contract trainer who's on the road delivering training, they collect all the evidence, they get it to you eventually, but they're doing all the recruitment process. You should have a written agreement with them that clearly outlines what their responsibilities are when they are recruiting those students, so that they're recruiting the right students. They're not recruiting students who are not suitable for that course or qualification. Like I was explaining with the vet fee help training, where there was the recruitment companies who were recruiting students into diploma level qualifications who didn't actually have the required skills and knowledge prior to course commencement. So there was causing all sorts of issues. I recently spoke to an auditor who's doing a review of some of those RTOs. They're involved with the complaints that have come in about vet fee help, where there were RTOs recruiting students who were not suitable for diploma level qualifications. And some of the issues have been that they've contacted the students that were enrolled into this training and they actually had no idea that they actually been enrolled. They had no idea that they were doing a course or a qualification, and the RTO had actually made claims that the student had completed assessments and actually been enrolled in the course and things like that. So there's all sorts of issues that have been out there. ASQA are clamping down on it, and they're getting out there and they're auditing these RTOs to make sure that they are complying. And that, you know, and this is costing the government millions of dollars because they're putting out this money for vet fee help students, but these students are actually not suitable for doing these courses and actually aren't doing the courses. They actually haven't commenced the course. So it's a big issue at the moment. I'm glad that they're actually clamping down on it because it's causing issues within our industry and giving everyone else a bad name within the RTOs for the way they've been non-compliant. So I think Vet Fee Help is an amazing program, and it's really, really good to be able to support students who can't afford to pay for their own training, and they can do this where they're paying it off through their tax. And unfortunately, there's been a few RTOs out there that have been rorting the system and spoiling it for everybody else. Hopefully, we'll get it all right. ASQA will regulate it, and we'll get in there and audit these RTOs that are non-compliant, and that will get our Vet Fee Help back up and going. There are now really strict requirements around vet fee help because of all of these issues. I heard recently that you can't apply for vet fee help. I thought it was 1 year, but apparently it's 2 years within your first 2 years of your registration. So what they're doing is making sure that you're actually up and going. It's also to stop people from setting up an RTO just for the purpose of getting vet fee help for delivery of their training. So they actually are up and going, running their training, getting it all organised first before they actually start claiming vet fee help funding. So yeah, all sorts of issues there. So it might be that you've engaged some educational support services to support your students. So it might be you've engaged someone to, part of the recruitment process is they do the selection criteria. They might be doing the L&N assessment with the students, or they might be doing an assessment of the students to identify their suitability for the course. You should have a written agreement with them as well, where it clearly outlines what are the selection criteria for your RTO, and in particular against the qualification or unit of competency that they will be enrolling in, so that they understand what their responsibilities are when recruiting these students into the courses. It's not all support services, so you could have referral services, so a list of referrals, which is what we provide you. We provide a list of referral services. You don't have to go out and get third-party written agreements with all of those support services. It's only where you've got them coming in and helping with the recruitment process for your RTO. So don't go out and go get lots of written agreements with all those support services, because that would just be a bit crazy. And I don't know whether you'd actually get all those agreements in place. It's more if they're helping with the recruitment process of your RTO. It might be that you, as I explained a bit earlier, is you have recruiting agents or brokers who will be recruiting students on your behalf. So that's another third-party arrangement that you could have in place. Okay, so that's who your third parties are. So there's a range of different ones that you could have. You could have more than those. There might be a bit more than what is defined there, but they're the typical ones that you'd have in third parties. If in doubt about you might have some other third-party arrangements in place and you're not really sure, get in contact with ASQA, because they can advise you on what are those third parties. But it's pretty much anybody recruiting students on your behalf or anybody delivering training and assessment under your scope of registration. That's a third-party arrangement. Okay, so what these clauses mean to your RTO, and what are the risks? So there's it can be high risk. So as you can see, if any of those third parties are non-compliant with the standards, that means you are non-compliant, which puts your RTO at risk of cancellation or a complaint or any other issues that it could be a cancellation of the qualification or cancellation of your registration. So it can be very high risk. So you need to ensure that you have practices and procedures in place to monitor those third parties and have it really clear with those third parties what are their responsibilities under a written agreement. Your RTO is responsible for all services delivered under its registration. So regardless of whether these are conducted, where these are conducted, and that includes overseas. So you could have someone delivering training and assessment on your behalf in another state, or it could be overseas, somewhere overseas that they're delivering training and assessment. But anywhere where they're delivering on behalf of your RTO under your scope of registration. This responsibility applies to all of your obligations as an RTO, including the provision of any data, so a vetness data, quality indicator data, your annual stat deck that you're going to be submitting as well. So all of that data that we're submitting. With cooperating with ASQA, so they're responsible for cooperating with ASQA as well. So you need to, 8.3 is where we go into notifying ASQA of those third-party arrangements. So anywhere where you have those third parties, you actually have to notify ASQA of how to do that. And we're going to go through what you need to do to notify ASQA. They're responsible for cooperating with ASQA as well. So you need to have it clear in your written agreements and in your policies and procedures that all third parties are required to cooperate with ASQA as well. Complying with advertising and marketing standards. So what are your policies and procedures on your marketing and advertising? And as I stated, that was standard 4.1, 5.1 and 5.2, all that information that you're providing to the students prior to course commencement and through those third parties. Informing prospective learners of their rights and responsibilities. How you're dealing with complaints and appeals. Any third party should also have a good understanding of what is the complaints and appeals process. How should they manage that complaints and appeals? So they should have access to the policies and procedures for managing third parties. managing complaints and appeals, and how are you managing those complaints and appeals through that third party. So what is the process for you? So they should follow the same policies and procedures that we have under Standard 6 for complaints and appeals. All your third parties should follow those policies and procedures, and then you should monitor them through your monthly meetings, the quality and compliance meetings. With the collection of fees, so that you're collecting, so if you're collecting more than $1,500 prior to course commencement, do you have tuition insurance in place? Do you have a bank guarantee? Do you have any of those arrangements in place? Or ensuring, which we recommend, that they only collect less than $1,500 prior to course commencement, and less than, or $1,500 or less in instalment payments, so for that collection of fees, and the refund policies, and how you reassessment fees and certificate reissue fees and things like that. So all of the fees that are involved with all of the training and assessment that the third party will be doing. And your record keeping, so how are you managing the student files, the enrolment forms, how you've got the manual, the paper-based files, and also how you're managing your electronic files. So they essentially, all third parties should be following the same policies and procedures that you have in the quality and compliance manual. And that's basically for all of these points that we have identified here. Okay, so the written agreements, what should be on your written agreement? So the written agreement should, you should have a written agreement with, actually I will change that to must. You must have a written agreement with any third party, or as may be known, a partner, which clearly outlines the responsibilities of each party. So it should be really clear on there, as a third party, you need to comply with the legislation and our policies and procedures, and here they are, and this is what you should do. And as the RTO, this is our responsibilities. We're responsible for issuing the certificates, we're responsible for assessment validation, we're responsible for ensuring that the evidence collected is sufficient to deem the student competent. So that, as an RTO, you still have to comply with all of the standards, and you need to ensure that that third party is doing that as well. The agreement must clearly outline the monitoring arrangements that the RTO will conduct to ensure compliance. So you should be conducting audits and annual audits of that RTO, of the other training provider, to ensure that they are actually complying with your standards. You should also be doing monitoring of all the files that are coming in, and validating those assessment tools, validating the enrolment forms before entering into your database. So it should be clear in your agreement what that process will be, and how will you collect that evidence, and how will you maintain that evidence, which should also align with your policies and procedures. You should include clear guidelines to the partner or third party on how to comply with the requirements of the vet quality framework. So what are their responsibilities for complying with those standards? You know what your responsibilities are because they're in the Q&C manual. What are you going to make them do to ensure that they are complying? And that should be in the written agreement. When it comes to someone recruiting students on your behalf, there should be clear guidelines on what that recruitment process is, what the enrolment process is, and that should be in line with your policies and procedures as per the Q&C manual. And how are they going to comply with the requirements of L&N? So there might be pre-enrolment requirements that they need to follow. So the enrolment form, we have questions on the back of the enrolment form that the students should be interviewed, and those questions should be asked prior to them coming onto the course. Your third party should be clear that they need to comply with that as well. If they're conducting L&N assessments, which depends on the qualification, what they're doing and what level the students are, if they've got pre-existing skills or not, they should be conducting L&N assessments as well. How are you ensuring that that third party will comply with the L&N assessments? That should be included in the written agreement with that third party. The agreement should include that the CEO of the RTO is responsible for approving all the marketing before it's made publicly available. We have that policy and procedure in our manual. It's under Standards 2.2, 2.3, but it's also under Standard 4.1 about your marketing side as well. So they should be following those policies and procedures. Continuing on with written agreements, It should include that the third party is responsible for cooperating with ASQA as well in the provision of information. So it could be assessment tools, student files, any other information that is required as per the standards that you need to collect, that data you need to collect in order to deem a student competent, and how are you ensuring that those students meet the requirements of the assessments. They may be contacted for the purpose of ASQA audit, so that's why you need to notify ASQA of these third-party arrangements so that they're aware of them beforehand. If you don't declare that you have a third-party arrangement and go to audit, you put your RTO at risk of them finding out that you do have a third-party arrangement in place and that you haven't notified ASQA of that. So you need to ensure that you do notify ASQA of any third-party arrangements and how you're managing those, and that in the written agreement with that third party, that the third party understands what their responsibilities are with regards to the conduct of ASQA audits. The RTO is responsible for issuing certificates and qualifications, and that the third party cannot issue any qualifications or certificates. It is the RTO's responsibility to issue certificates and statements of attainment. You cannot ever let a third party issue certificates on your behalf. There are extenuating circumstances where you may apply to ASQA for those third parties to issue certificates on your behalf. I wouldn't recommend it. I would always have it that the RTO is issuing the certificates, and even if it is that you're doing it through the database and then posting out those certificates separately. But it is the RTO's responsibility for the issuance of certificates. And when managing the risk of your RTO, getting someone else to issue certificates on your behalf is high risk. There's all sorts of issues that can happen there. I had a situation, it wasn't a third party arrangement, but it was a situation where I was working within an RTO. I was working as a business development manager of an RTO, and I had discovered on the server that one of the trainers of the RTO was issuing certificates and invoices on their own and getting paid. The trainer was getting paid directly for those certificates they're issuing. He was a pretty dumb trainer because he left it on the server, and I found it on the server. I also found out that he was in cahoots with the previous RTO manager and that they were doing this together. All sorts of issues for the RTO. It does put the RTO at risk. You, as an RTO, is non-compliant when those sort of things happen. The risks are someone could have complained about that training that was delivered by that trainer. Then ASQA would want to see that there's a third-party agreement in place for managing that trainer, which there was none because the RTO had no idea that this was happening. It was a huge issue. I had to terminate the trainer the very next day because of those issues. Like, it's illegal. He had broken the law by doing that and issuing certificates. The RTO could have pursued it and actually sued him for what he did. And it depends on the amount of evidence that you can collect on whether they are actually issuing those certificates or not. I didn't take it any further. I left it up with the RTO what they wanted to do. But for me, I was not working with an unethical trainer, assessor, so I had them terminated as soon as possible. And that's the risk that you have in place. You need to ensure that your certificates are protected and access to your database is protected, that only certain people who are authorised can have access to your certificates, 1, and 2, access to your database to issue your certificates. You shouldn't have certificate templates on your server that anybody can access. It should be locked securely away within your database. But also any certificate paper that you're using, that should be locked securely away as well, so that people, Joe Blogs off the street or a trainer or assessor working in your organisation can access your template and issue a certificate on your behalf without you even knowing it. It is your responsibility to ensure the security of those documents. Monitoring arrangements. So all third parties should be inducted into the RTO's policies and procedures, in particular the policies and procedures that are relevant to that third party, i.e. the recruitment process of students, and the enrolment process, marketing, so standards 4.1, 4.1, 5.1 and 5.2, looking at the recruitment process, the assessment requirements as well under standard 1.8. Not all the standards are relevant for third parties. If you have a look in our policies and procedures, we have it in there, what are third parties and who, what are their responsibilities as a third party under those standards. The RTO should either provide the assessment tools or have a copy of the assessment tools that are being used by the third party. You should always have a copy of every single assessment tool that is used within your RTO. I've seen different situations where the RTO provides the assessment tools to the third party, which is the ideal case because then you're only validating your own assessment tools. But there are situations where the third party have developed their own assessment tools and they're using their own. These should be approved by the RTO before they start using those assessment tools, and you should have a copy on your server. Now that could cause issues because the third party may not want you to have access to their assessment tools. No can do, you have to have access to those assessment tools. You should have access to every single assessment tool that is being used by your RTO. And all of those assessment tools should be systematically validated, and you should have them on your assessment validation schedule and your plan, and you should be using your assessment validation reports for validating those assessment tools as well. The RTO should ensure that the third party follows the RTO's policies and procedures on recruiting and enrolling students into a course if they're doing the recruitment process. Continuing on for monitoring arrangements, you should conduct annual audits of the third party to ensure that they actually comply with the vet quality framework and the standards for RTOs. It is your responsibility that you conduct those audits to ensure that they're compliant. That is the best way to ensure that third parties are complying with the requirements of the vet quality framework is by conducting annual audits. But you don't want to leave it a year to ensure that they are actually complying. You should be doing regular monitoring of the assessment tools that are coming in, validating those assessment tools to ensure that they actually meet the requirements. I'd also recommend that you go sit in on the training of the other provider to actually ensure that they're delivering the training and conducting the assessments the same way that you would prefer them to be conducted. The third party should have access to your completed training and assessment strategy as well, and delivering and assessment plans so that they are actually delivering and assessing against the requirements that you've put into your strategies for your training and assessment. Ensure that the third party is following the continuous improvement process, i.e. that they're completing trainers' reports, opportunities for improvement, that their students are completing quality indicator and feedback forms, and that you're collecting that and taking it back into the RTO, that they're doing WHS incidents reporting as well, that the third party have a clear understanding of your complaints and appeals process, and that the students through the third party unlocks when it comes to submitting a complaint or appeal. Third-party trainers. Now, there can be a range of different third-party trainers that you may have in place. So you might have a third-party trainer who is a contractor to your RTO, but they're not actually part of the recruitment process of the students. That's a bit different. They should be complying with the standards anyway and your policies and procedures as a contractor. But if you have a third-party training organisation delivering training and assessment on your behalf, they have trainers and assessors that are working for them to deliver the training and assessment. They also have to comply with the standards 1.13 to 1.16, which is the standards for your trainers and assessors. They are also required to undertake professional development in both the vet and the vocational sectors that they're delivering their training and assessment. So they should be current with their Certificate 4 in training and assessment. And they should be doing professional development in the training sector, so attending conferences, webinars like these, doing professional development to upgrade their skills in the vet sector, but also the vocational sector, so where the sector that they're delivering their training and assessment, they should be keeping up to date with professional development in their vet sector as well. They should hold the current qualifications for both these areas, and are maintaining their currency with their industry. So how are you ensuring that they're current within their industry, they have the current skills and knowledge? So for example, it might be you have a childcare trainer who's working as a third party. You need to ensure that that childcare trainer is current in the industry. So currency is they've been in the industry in the last 3 years and they have currency skills within the last 3 years. That's a general rule of thumb, not written anywhere by ASQA, but general rule of thumb. Okay, so that's standards 2.3 and 2.4. Standard 8.3 is that you must have that written agreement and that you've notified ASQA of that agreement, that you have a third party delivering training assessment on your behalf, and they must be notified within 30 calendar days of that agreement being entered into or prior to the obligations under the agreement taking effect, whichever occurs first, and that you need to notify ASQA of the completion or cessation of that agreement within 30 calendar days of the end of that agreement. So your RTO must notify ASQA whenever it starts or ends a third-party agreement, and notification of third-party arrangements must be done through ASQAnet. So you need to log into ASQAnet, and you can set up your own login in ASQAnet to be able to do that. This requirement covers agreements for a third party to provide any of the following. So if you have a third party delivering training and or assessment, as stated earlier, educational and support services, but this doesn't include student counselling, mediation, or IT support or anything like that, or anybody who is recruiting on behalf of your RTO. They're who you should notify ASQA about, so anybody doing any of those. So the way you do it, the way you notify ASQA is you use the ASQAnet portal, and you notify them of any commencement or cessation of those agreements, and you just log into ASQAnet. I'm going to show you how to do that in a minute, and you go to the notifications tab and select third-party service arrangements. There is no cost associated with submitting that notification to ASQA. I should clarify that there's no cost to ASQA for you to notify. There will be a cost to you because you'll need to manage that monitoring arrangement and things like that, but ASQA do not charge you any fees for that. And they will confirm that they've received that form through ASQAnet. It is an explicit requirement of all RTOs under the standards for RTOs 2015 that they notify ASQA within 30 days of that entering that written agreement with any other organisation delivering training, assessment or support services under that RTO scope of registration. You have to do it. There's no way of getting out of it. You must notify ASQA of that. Okay, so this is just an example of what the portal looks like when you go onto ASQAnet. So you log into ASQAnet, and then you can go to notifications, my notifications, and third-party service arrangements. I'm actually going to just show my desktop just to show you where it is where you log in. Okay, so you log into ASQAnet, you'll go to your home page, you go to notifications. Find My Notifications is where you've notified ASQA previously of any third-party arrangements. You can find any of those notifications under there, but to notify, you go to Notify Third-Party Arrangements, and then you enter your RTO ID that you're notifying of your RTO, and then you go through the process. So there's instructions here on how to notify ASQA, what you have to do. It's clearly stated here there is no fees involved with notifying ASQA of those. Then you go to the next page, so your legal entity will come up here, your registered training names will come up there, your RTO code will come up in there as well. Then you need to put in here whether you're notifying them of a commencement or a cessation. What the commencement date is, so if it's within 30 days, so you can backdate it, but only up to 30 days. You can't go any further back than 30 days. Well, you should go back any 30 days because you've got to notify them within 30 days. You can notify them in advance that you will be commencing. So it could be, you might want to put the end of July, for example. You haven't started yet, but you've got an agreement in place, and this is when they're going to be commencing training under that agreement. Then you enter in here what are the third party details, so the legal name of that company, any trading names that they have underneath that company. Is the third party an Australian business or is it overseas? So yes, if it is in Australia. If no, it'll be from overseas. But you can put the ABN and ACN details if they're an Australian business. If they're an RTO, you put their RTO code there, but that's not a requirement. It's only if they happen to be an RTO as well. The name, the contact person, I would recommend the CEO or the managing director or one of the directors of that organisation is who you should enter here. Put in their name, their contact details, email address, and what services will they be providing. If they're a recruitment company, what will they be doing? If that they will be doing the recruitment of prospective learners, or that they will be enrolling students on your behalf and that they'll be collecting the fees on behalf of your RTO for that. Whether they're going to be delivering the training and assessment on your behalf, or are they going to be providing educational support services, i.e., as I explained, they might be doing LNN assessments or pre-selection requirements prior to student commencing the course. You don't need to put counselling services and support services in as a third party. These are people who would be part of the recruitment process. They shouldn't be, I don't know why this is here, issuance of qualifications unless you have some sort of arrangement in place with ASQA that they can issue certificates. So this one shouldn't really be ticked. I think if you did tick it, it would actually flag something with ASQA and they'd be in contact with you to actually identify why are they issuing certificates on your behalf. And includes, it may that be that it includes services overseas of qualifications. I won't be able to enter that because I haven't actually put all the details in. So then your CEO will be required to sign a stat deck. So you can download it from here. You download the form from there, sign that, scan it, and then upload it here. So you'd add it and upload it in here. And that's basically it. That's how you notify ASQA of any third-party arrangements that you may have in place. So it's pretty simple. I've also got that process in our policies and procedures, so you can access that. The whole process is in there. It's pretty simple, as I stated. There's not much involved with that process. It's just really notifying ASQA through that portal. Okay, thank you very much for attending today's session. I hope you got a lot out of that today and have a better understanding of what the requirements are for working within third-party arrangements. As stated earlier, if you have any further questions about third-party arrangements and you have want some clarification around those, please don't hesitate to contact Vivacity. Anybody on our team can assist you with that question. If all else fails, get in contact with ASQA as well. They can also clarify to you what is a third-party arrangement. As I said, it can be high risk to have third parties in place, but if you manage them well, you monitor them, make sure that they're recruiting correctly, it can actually be quite lucrative for your business. You can actually make money out of it. I used to have third-party arrangements in place when I had my RTO. I will admit I didn't manage them properly. That was before ASQA, and that was before we had actually legislation that states how we need to monitor. It is a risk to your RTO. Another one is that works really well is where you work in partnership with another RTO or another training organisation where you might be delivering together. So you might be delivering, this is another situation where it might be a third party. It might be that they're delivering the training and you're delivering the assessment. That's still considered a third party. So you need to have a written agreement in place for that third party arrangement as well. So for example, it might be forklift driving where you need to have someone who delivers the training and someone who delivers the assessment. You might have to have two parties involved. You will need a third party arrangement in place for those as well, unless it's within your own organisation. But yeah, that's just another example of third party. Thank you very much for attending today. I hope you got a lot out of the webinar, and I look forward to catching up with you. I've had some questions about consistency of the webinars. As you may know, I've been on the road for the last 6 weeks, so it's been a bit hard getting these webinars up and going. We will be setting a regular date today and it will be back to Mondays. We'll be delivering those webinars on Mondays, and it will be on a regular occurrence. I think it was the second Monday of each month is when we're going to be delivering the webinars. So we'll have that sent out to you today. Thank you very much for attending today. I look forward to catching up with you again in the future. Thank you.